Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lines in Sand, a YouTube channel inspired by the majesty of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Today I want to talk about some of the alternative theories surrounding the original function and purpose of the Great Pyramid at Giza, and some of the other pyramids actually. More specifically, I want to talk about alternative theories that propose the pyramids instead existed for a utilitarian purpose rather than for a funerary function. The most popular and widely accepted theory about the pyramids, and the one that is fully adopted by Egyptology, is the theory that the pyramids had primarily a funerary function, with the Great Pyramid at Giza being the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, and the other pyramids all being designated to certain pharaohs in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th dynasties primarily. Despite the often quoted fact that no bodies have been known to be found inside the pyramids, there is some evidence pointing towards the buildings being used as tombs, at least at some point in their working lives. Alternative theorists like to write off the tomb theory with a quick dismissal of, well, no bodies were ever found, or perhaps that something like the graffiti linking the Great Pyramid to Khufu's work gangs that was found by Howard Weiss is actually a counterfeit, and so on. But the fact is, we simply do not know for certain either way. Just about any theory about the pyramids, the Great Pyramid in particular, has plenty of holes in it, not just the tomb theory, so hold your upset comments, at least until you've watched the rest of the video. The tomb theory is the theory that I subscribe to the most in my short time exploring ancient Egypt, and I will try to cover this off in another video at some point in the future, but I'm on a learning journey here, and I want to give these other alternative theories some real time and thought. Admittedly, I've not given many of the alternative hypotheses that much thought, I'll be honest with you. If it was not for the popularity of something like Chris Dunn's Giza power plant theory, then no doubt it would have taken me much longer to address these kinds of theories. So, this YouTube video series I've found myself in is the perfect vehicle then to explore some of these. I want to go through the main points presented for each of the theories I'm going to talk about today and take each case on its individual merits. With that in mind, I will be doing a separate full deep dive with one of the theories I will be talking about here, that being the Giza power plant theory, one theory that seems to be very popular online, so it's a great place to start, if nothing else, with the deep dives. Seeing as I have Chris Dunn's book, we'll get through that in as much detail as we can, but looping this back in with some of the other alternative utilitarian theories, what other kinds of functions are we talking about for the pyramids, if not funerary? Well, for the most part, we're talking about power, but power can be a very vague term. Are these theories about resonant, seismic, electrical energy, electromagnetic energy, batteries or charging pads for extraterrestrials? Heck, even nuclear power theories exist about the Great Pyramid. There's one theory in particular as well that talks about chemical reactions inside these buildings. So let's take a look at some of them in today's video. I appreciate this may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I went on a journey exploring these different viewpoints and wanted to share my findings. But I totally understand if this is not your thing. For now, if you're with me, grab a drink, perhaps a damn fine cup of coffee, or perhaps something else, and join me on this journey of discovery. To say that conspiracy theories or alternative theories are rife about the pyramids would be true, but to be honest, quote-unquote alternative thinking has been applied to pretty much any subject these days, whether we live in the age of information or the age of misinformation or disinformation. I'll leave that decision up to you. Where the pyramids differ, I feel, however, from all this other online discourse, especially in regards to the Great Pyramid, is in the number of people who sincerely believe in these alternative theories versus what is put forward as the official narrative. I have been as guilty as any other person at rolling my eyes when someone insists, often quite rudely, that I am wrong about absolutely everything that I know, that I should open my eyes, and only then I will see the true purpose of these megalithic structures. You can attach pretty much any alternative theory to these kinds of messages. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. What's constant is the fervor and nature of the hammering of the point home, perhaps sometimes too bluntly. Now, the most frustrating part about getting these kinds of messages, and I'm sure the kind of stuff I read is but a small fraction of what is written to bigger channels or to figureheads in this field, but I have never actually given my opinion either way on where I stand with the pyramids. I've never actually come out and said, this right here is what I believe, and I stand by it. Yet, I still get attacked, I guess, for not mentioning that the pyramids are clearly power plants or what have you, without ever having really spoken out for or against any of this stuff. In fact, the closest I've ever come to dismissing a theory is my take on the Orion correlation theory, which seemed to upset a lot of people, but there we go. So to be told to wake up, or to open my eyes, or to stop believing the lies is usually an instant shut-off switch for me. But one thing that is commonplace across all fields of thought around alternative thinking is that there are people, perhaps many who aren't as rude as some of the loudest commentators online, who very firmly and passionately believe in these kinds of theories. So on that alone, I think it's worth giving them the time of day. What is it that gets people so excited about some of these alternative theories? What is it that causes them to hate the official line so much? See, for example, there may be thousands of people all over the world watching, I don't know, David Icke videos online every day, for example. But how many of David Icke's viewers, let alone his diehard fans, actually believe in lizard people and all that stuff or whatever? How many people actually genuinely believe, out of his watcher base, that there are lizard people in amongst us? Now put that in stark contrast with some of the alternative theories about the Great Pyramid, and it won't take long for you to find that, in general, people online at least are hugely distrustful of mainstream Egyptology, perhaps with good reason, and that people who are consuming media about power plant theories or what have you tend to be in agreement with each other, almost uniformly across the board, that this is what was actually going on. Just look through the comments section on any YouTube video about the Giza pyramids being power plants, and you will find a general air of agreement and support for the video uploader, rather than a flame war of abusive comments. You'll also likely find a shared distrust of mainstream Egyptology more often than not. The sheer number of people who refuse to accept any evidence that the Great Pyramid was a tomb is quite staggering, to be honest. And if you're one of these people, then I'm not saying you're wrong, stupid, incorrect, anything like that. No, I just find it impressive in regards to the sheer number of people who subscribe to alternative theories in lieu of the mainstream theory. What I'm saying is, generally, alternative thinking draws smaller crowds. But as always, the pyramids seem to be an anomaly. This is bigger than just the Great Pyramid, of course, but the Great Pyramid has a vacuum effect that seems to suck people down into some strange rabbit holes. Those who subscribe, then, to the official version of events, what Egyptology says is what happened, what they were for, how they were built, etc. These people seem to be in a small minority, or a small majority at least in the online space. It could be that they are perhaps just a less vocal contingent of the online world, but this is something interesting that I have noticed during my research into these subjects, and I thought it was definitely worth mentioning. You do have to wonder how much of this alternative interest stems from the closed, draconian nature of mainstream Egyptology, rather than any watertight proposals in some of these alternative theories. But we will soon see. The inflexibility presented by a series of key Egyptologists no doubt has a large part to play here, I would think. So, I've had a bit of a ramble there. Let's then get into the meat of the video. Could the Great Pyramid of Giza have functioned as a power plant? Or are any other pyramids, for that matter, power plants? Could it have been somewhere that allowed powerful chemical reactions? Let's cut the waffling finally and have a look at some of the few main theories that are out there. The first one to start with then absolutely has to be the Giza power plant theory. Easily the most popular, or at least it is the classic utilitarian theory. Chris Dunn published his controversial book, The Giza Power Plant, back in 1998. Now, the pyramid, or pyramids being power plants, is a theory that predates Chris Dunn, but Chris's work was the first time it reached a wider mainstream audience, I guess, even though, of course, it remains a fringe theory. Now, as I've said, there is a deep dive planned on the finer details of Dunn's theories, but the general gist of what Dunn proposes is as follows. Water flowing beneath the Great Pyramid creates a resonant frequency that travels up through the subterranean chamber and into the pyramid chambers above. Now, bear with me because this sounds a bit crackers, but two different chemicals are introduced into the pyramid via the Queen's Chamber shafts. These react in the Queen's Chamber and mingle with the frequency emanating from the core of the Earth beneath the pyramid. This reaction creates hydrogen, which travels up the Grand Gallery, which Dunn refers to as a resonator hall of sorts, and through a series of resonators, this mixture is manipulated into sound forms or shapes or patterns or sound waves, which are then fed up into the granite of the King's Chamber. There is a common misconception that I've seen referenced multiple times online when talking about the Giza power plant theory, and that is that the corridors and chambers of the Great Pyramid, as well as the Grand Gallery, are lined with granite. This is, of course, not true, and it's only the King's Chamber that is made from granite. Of course, this seems like a small thing to point out due to how out there this theory is, but you know, I have to have a level and correct playing field to begin with, so I can at least fairly assess these wackier theories. So how does then the pyramid generate power from all of this? This mixture, as I've said, is mutated via the resonators in the Grand Gallery and pulsed up into the granite reaction chamber. Here, piezoelectricity comes into play. Dunn proposes that the granite used in the King's Chamber is made of over 80% quartz and is therefore extremely conductive material. He also proposes that granite is the perfect piezoelectrical material which can build up a significant electrical charge. This is done here in the King's Chamber in a similar way to how it happens in what is called a Helmholtz generator. Think about blowing on an empty bottle and how the force you are generating resonates around inside that empty bottle, just for like a small scale example there. This energy is then transferred up and through the so-called relieving chambers and out into the masonry of the pyramid, where again the local Giza limestone that was used in the core masonry is also a nicely conductive material. The supposed original gold capstone to the Great Pyramid is the icing on the cake here then, and the electrical energy is released this way into the outside world to be harnessed in whichever way it is seen fit. Now, further supporting this theory is the Tura limestone casing stones originally in place on the exterior of the pyramid, which this theory supposes were put in place because of their insulating properties to stop the energy escaping, as it were, and also by the metal hoops that were found on the so-called doors at the end of the Queen's Chamber shafts. Without getting too deep, really, these plated copper loops are integral to the chemical process that takes place further down in the Queen's Chamber. I do have to wonder if the significance of the quartz sand in the cavities alongside the Queen's Chamber corridor could feed into this theory in any way, shape or form, but we have enough rabbit holes to go down as it is. There is, of course, no solid evidence for the Giza power plant theory. There is, however, the same evidence that has always existed around various aspects of the Great Pyramid, but in this case, it is how that evidence has been interpreted which is important. Now, if you think Chris Dunn's theory is a wild one, a slightly more niche yet similar theory would be the nuclear reactor theory. This is one that caught my attention right off the bat. Nuclear energy is not something I would immediately associate with the ancient world, so these kind of theories intrigued me. Unfortunately, for all the noise and hot air online coming from people proposing that the Great Pyramid was a power station that dealt with nuclear energy, perhaps unsurprisingly, real, solid, tangible evidence is nowhere to be seen, as is, more surprisingly, even the existence of a complete theory that actually accounts for the known layout of the pyramid. There is one exception, or should I say, one exception thus far that I have found, and that is the theory proposed over on nuclearpyramid.com. I found out about this from the YouTube channel Lisa and Richard Ray in their video, What Was the Great Pyramid's Original Purpose? I tried further investigating the original source of this theory, but the Nuclear Pyramid website appears to be offline. Using the Wayback Machine, we can see that the domain has expired. This capture from as recent as 13th of October 2022 shows the domain is now for sale. However, if we use the Wayback Machine to crawl to earlier snapshots, going back to the year of Lisa and Richard Ray's video, that being 2018, we can find that the Nuclear Pyramid website was still online and active at that time. The website was supposedly administered by Meta Research Incorporated, a mysterious organization that is, quote, a scientific non-profit corporation dedicated to supporting promising but unpopular alternative ideas in astronomy, end quote. Now, people have told me that Facebook have got their fingers in a lot of pies, but nobody told me about this. No, maybe the disappearance of Meta Research Incorporated and their website has got something to do with Facebook being rebranded as Meta? I don't know. Who knows? But this is all gone. You can only find this stuff via the Wayback Machine. The hypothesis then of this is that the Great Pyramid is a plutonium mill, and it was originally published in the 10th volume of the company's research bulletin on September the 15th, 2001. Additional work extending the theory to the Khafre and Menkaure pyramids, called here the second and third pyramids, were added in the 12th volume of that same bulletin, released this time on the 15th of March 2003. Now, I will not be including the Khafre or Menkaure theories in this brief overview, but I will link the Wayback Machine snaps below in the video description for you to go through if you are interested, along with the Khufu Pyramid plutonium mill theory, as well as Lisa and Richard's video on this matter, which explains everything in great detail. Now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to provide an outline to the theory rather than an intense and meticulous breakdown, but if there is an appetite for this, I can do a further video running through the actual documentation and analysis in a bit more depth, as I'll be doing for Chris Dunn's theory. For now, if you really want to know more, I would start with the Lisa and Richard's video on the matter. So this one, what's the brief hypothesis then? Meta Research Incorporated proposed that the Great Pyramid of Giza did not have a funerary function, but was indeed a plutonium mill. The general gist of the theory, it follows much in the same vein as Chris Dunn's Giza power plant. Now, that's not to say that this is a carbon copy of that theory, not at all, but what I mean to say is that the nuclear pyramid theory utilizes all the internal chambers of the Great Pyramid in the same way that Dunn's does, only here it uses them in different ways, in a different order, in a different configuration. However, there is something about nuclear reactions happening inside these ancient stone buildings that just rubs me up the wrong way. I'm not saying I'm drawing the line at nuclear reaction, that this is one step too far, because, well, honestly, I don't particularly believe any theory in this video. I'm just exploring them and trying to learn more about them. But when you think that the Great Pyramid, a structure that is at the least 4,500 years old, is strong enough to contain a nuclear reaction, as well as the fact that any chamber acting as such a reactor would need to be completely and utterly hermetically sealed, at least during the time of the reaction, then this theory starts to quickly fall to pieces, and I don't really want to be drudging through it when it's complete nonsense. The theory, for example, proposes that the King's Chamber, a giant granite rectangle of machine-like proportions, was the main reaction chamber. Whilst reactions here were taking place, staff are working below in the Queen's Chamber, performing various tasks relating to the running of the plutonium mill. It was at this point, and that's why I mentioned this, that I decided I wasn't going to proceed any further with learning about this theory, as why would you put the control center, or the room where your staff are making these reactions happen, directly underneath a nuclear reactor? On top of that, the people would have been one short Grand Gallery's length away from repeatedly emanating lethal doses of powerful radiation. Now, I'm no nuclear physicist, but the fact that the theory genuinely proposes people were inside the pyramid when it was reacting immediately kills any meager amount of credibility it may have had. The theory goes from extreme fringe science to complete nonsense in a matter of seconds. So if nuclear energy then, in this case, is a step too far, or in this theory at least is just a step too not possible, what other utilitarian functions are there in regards to the pyramids? We'll get to that, but before we move on, another thing that people have been commenting to tell me about is that Tesla knew the secrets of the pyramids. Now, this isn't that uncommon, actually. There is a lot of content online about Nikola Tesla and how he knew the secret of the Great Pyramid and how he could harness power. Whether this was done in the same method as Chris Dunn's theory or in other ways that we just haven't found yet, but dig deep enough online and you will find conspiracy theories around Tesla, and that he was building a device to generate infinite free energy, but the American corporations that sponsored his work shut him down, as it would mean the end of their industrialized businesses. Now, try as I might, other than reading that Tesla may have based his machine off of the Great Pyramid, I can, perhaps unsurprisingly, find no evidence of a real link between Tesla and the Great Pyramid. This one for sure is staying then on the crazier end of YouTube. Heck, just type Tesla Great Pyramid into YouTube and you will get a selection of different videos that go into this whole story in depth, but without actually really saying anything concrete. Now, there is one more utilitarian theory that I want to cover today, and it's not so much about power plants, but more about specific chemical reactions. The land of Chem. Now, I've definitely saved my favourite theory for last. The land of Chem is a much more recent theory than the others on this list, which has come about in the last few years. In fact, it's so new that it's still ongoing. There is a book at the base of the theory, but its author, Geoffrey Drumm, has an active YouTube channel that posts several times a week from on the ground in Egypt as he works to further cement and explore his hypothesis. I do quickly have to thank multiple people who have reached out to me over the last few months recommending that I check out the land of Chem. Why am I thanking people about this one and not the others on the list? Well, going back to the preamble at the start of this video, it's worth mentioning that none of these people were rude, pushy, or dogmatic about promoting this theory, which, immediately makes it an outlier in this list. Geoff Drumm has built a small but strong and definitely dedicated following for his work. Getting into what the land of Chem is all about can be quite daunting. Go back to the beginning and things perhaps start too slowly, and jump into something recent, perhaps released even this week, and things are too far down the rabbit hole now to make any coherent sense immediately anyway, to a newcomer, in my opinion at least. Thankfully, there is a solution. Geoff has appeared on other podcasts and channels explaining his theory, and in these cases he is of course expected to summarize his work in 1 or 2 hours rather than going insanely deep through the medium of his own channel. The video that explained the land of Chem to me the best was the interview and presentation Geoff gave to the Funny Old World channel. I will link that video in the description if you are interested in diving deeper, but for now I will attempt to give a high-level overview of what the land of Chem is about. So what Drumm proposes is that we have all gotten the purpose of ancient Egyptian sites completely and utterly wrong. They were not tombs, nor of any other funerary function, nor were they power plants, at least not in the same way as the, dare I say, traditionally more established theories in that vein. Instead, each building or ancient site, not just the pyramids, each is a part of a wider industrial complex that was run by a powerful and advanced ancient civilization. You can perhaps maybe take a guess at where this is going when you refer back to the name of the book and YouTube channel, the land of Chem. In regards to the pyramids, the general idea here is that they instead acted as chemical plants rather than power plants, and they were designed in such a way that would allow chemical reactions to happen inside their chambers in order to produce chemicals for use in agriculture, such as ammonia-based fertilizers, or to instigate reactions that would result in the creation of paint, pigments, or metals for use in more cosmetic functions. Drumm goes on to link the prosperity and success of ancient Egypt to their ability to mass produce these elements on an industrial scale. The theory also accounts for the different layouts inside different structures, why two pyramid interiors are not the same, for example. And this is because they were different buildings with different functions. Now I hear you all scream, where is the evidence for this? Going into each pyramid would take a very long time, so I will reserve that for a separate deep dive into the land of Chem should that happen. I would also very much like to read the book at the core of the theory before embarking on such an undertaking, but I will mention one example because it was the first element of Drumm's work that made me sit up and go, okay, now this is interesting. And what I'm referring to here is the Red Pyramid at Dashur, a pyramid I've not actually covered on my channel yet. Many have noted inside the Red Pyramid the strong smell of ammonia. This appears to worsen the further into the pyramid that you go. Now, I've never been inside the Red Pyramid, or any pyramid for that matter, yet, but this smell has often been attributed to these scores of bats that once called the pyramid their home. There is significant staining too on the walls of the Red Pyramid chambers, which is also often attributed to the bats, but Drumm dismisses this as incorrect, and it is instead evidence of previous chemical reactions having taken place within these chambers. Drumm compares the unusual interior of the Red Pyramid to the original apparatus designed in modern times for the production of ammonia. The visual similarities here are admittedly rather striking. Drumm explains how the chambers are connected and proposes therefore that the Red Pyramid was indeed fulfilling a utilitarian function as something of a large-scale ammonia factory. There is, of course, much more to this theory, even just this element of this theory, that I can cram into this overview video, and I do appreciate how ridiculous some of this sounds at higher level. I am not really selling it on its credibility. I do appreciate that. I'm not one either that personally subscribes to these kinds of theories, but I cannot play down the fact that this one is particularly well thought out, which, along with interesting tidbits such as the Red Pyramid chamber similarities to the ammonia apparatus, as we've just covered. So if these kinds of things tickle your curiosity, then I would very much suggest checking out Land of Chem. What I do like about Drumm as well, particularly in the above interview that I just mentioned, is that he takes time to deconstruct why other similar theories, such as Chris Dunn's Giza power plant theory, doesn't work. Whether Drumm is right or wrong is not really the point. The fact is that he is prepared and equipped with counter-arguments and reasoning, and that is immediately refreshing in these kinds of fields. So, I appreciate that this video is something of a departure from what we usually deal with here on the channel, but it is something that I had planned to do from the channel's inception, before I got caught up falling down other rabbit holes over the past few months. And with the deep dive on Dunn's power plant theory due on my end, I figured the time was right to do a high-level overview on some of the more popular non-funerary utilitarian theories. Now, the question is, do any of these warrant further investigation? If any of them do, then obviously I'm already planning the Giza power plant one, but I would pick the Land of Chem, because what Geoff proposes is significantly different from the others, and also has the most circumstantial evidence. Unless there is a great call for me doing so, I think I'll leave the nuclear pyramid and Tesla stuff lie, as that's a bit too far out there, even for me. So, what do you think of these kinds of theories? Please get in touch. Let us all know in the comments. Let's have an interesting conversation around this. I expect perhaps some wildly differing opinions on this one, so I will take the time to casually just remind you that if you're going to comment on this video, please just be nice to each other, okay? I wanted to address some of these theories, as when I started the channel they were often pitched to me, as I've said, so if you've stuck with me to the end of this one, I thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate you all coming here and supporting my small channel and checking out my content as I discover more and more about ancient Egypt, or in this case, the slightly more fringe theories surrounding it. So take care out there. I'll see you all again soon. Thank you for watching. All the best.